Thank you to everyone who tuned in to tonight's At the Virtual Table. We will be getting started in about 30 seconds. Thanks again to everyone who is joining us at the virtual table. Here's Laura Washington.
Thanks, Brian. Good evening, everyone, and happy Juneteenth. In case you missed it, we have a new holiday, a new federal holiday, a new state holiday honoring Juneteenth. A lot happened today in Washington and Springfield and Chicago in politics, and you're going to hear all about it. We're going to dissect a lot of it tonight. First, I want to tell you about the Chicago Sun-Times. The Chicago Sun-Times, our great host that's been putting on at the virtual table for over a year. And you can't miss not only at the virtual table, but you can't miss our digital offerings because we bring everything to you, politics and beyond, wherever you are. You can get the new Sun-Times e-paper, which is a daily digital replica of the print product. It lives every day, all the time at paper.suntimes.com. We have a special digital offer that gives you unlimited access to both the e-paper and every story on suntimes.com for just $2.49 a month. You can't miss that. You can learn more, a lot more, and subscribe at suntimes.com/subscribe. And now I will turn it over to our co-host, Lynn Sweet, Sun-Times Washington Bureau Chief. Lynn.
Thank you, Laura, and good evening, everybody. We're joined tonight by Isaac Dovere. He's the author of the just published book, Battle for the Soul Inside the Democratic Campaign to Beat Trump. It's a book about the Democrats' path back, how Biden became the nominee. Isaac covers politics day to day for The Atlantic, but he also is, by the way, a former Chicagoan. He's a 2003 graduate of the University of Chicago. He has a master's in humanities, where he studied intellectual history, did a thesis on Ben Franklin and Henry David Thoreau, which, of course, Isaac is the perfect setup to write about how Joe Biden got the nomination. And I'm especially interested tonight in all the behind the scenes things that Obama was doing. And just so everyone knows, you also cover the Obama post-presidency. And I recently saw you when we were both in Chicago, covering the Chicago visit of Vice President Kamala Harris. So everyone, the book starts with the Democrats starting to figure out the wreckage of the 2016 election, and it ends with Isaac's exclusive interview with Joe Biden in the Oval Office. In between is a pretty unlikely journey. But can we start out this way, Isaac? This is a fly in the wall book, and you tell us a lot about Obama behind the scenes. He had intended, as you write, he had thought in his retirement he would transcend politics and become a thought leader of the world. Didn't quite happen that way. So give us a feel for the Obama behind the scenes as he navigates this 26-person field running for president.
Well, first of all, thanks, Lynn, for having me, and to Laura, too. Barack Obama had a plan for his post-presidency. It did not include Donald Trump. It did not include being involved in politics that much. He was pretty much done with it. He wanted to be a presence, but to make some money, to get involved in doing things with his foundation. There wasn't a plan for a big post-presidential operation. And then Trump wins and everything changes very quickly for a lot of things, including his own plans. He builds up a staff. He realizes that he is going to have a role in politics. All of a sudden, they're in the White House one day and it comes on them that they have to think about who the DNC chair is supposed to be and whether he's going to get involved with that. Of course, He ended up supporting Tom Perez. And then he needs to navigate what the role is with Trump. This started from 2 days after the election when he hosts Trump in the Oval Office. I was actually one of the pool reporters in the Oval Office that day. And Obama went into that meeting thinking, oh, I can convince him of some things and make him think about things, break through to him, talk about you shouldn't round up the dreamers because think about how that'll look on TV. And Trump seems to be listening. He says, make it the Trump-Iran nuclear deal. That's how Obama thought he'd save the Iran deal. And all of that goes on. And then there is a process that happens very quickly during the transition as Obama is seeing the way Trump is behaving, where he gets very dark about what's going to happen with the presidency and with the country. And by the time that he leaves after the inauguration, when he leaves Washington, there is a sense on the plane, it's not technically Air Force One anymore, but it's Air Force One, that same plane, as they're taking off. Valerie Jarrett, Obama's closest advisor, says that they had a sense of relief, she told me, but also a sense of dread of what was coming next. And this continues to build over the Trump years. And you see Obama reflecting, I think, in a lot of ways, what a lot of Democrats certainly were going through, but also people in the country at large, and try to process the Trump presidency. And part of why that's in the book is because it's relevant to the Democratic Party, and relevant especially as Obama gets involved with the Democratic Party and helping guide the primary process. But also it's because it gives you a window, as so much of this book does, into what was really going on with these people behind the scenes.
Well, one of the things that you write about is as this long primary season started, that Obama saw his job mainly not as it's figuring out who the nominee should be, but just figuring out how he can make sure Trump didn't win another term. How did that inform what he did? And frankly, you also write how Biden was annoyed because he didn't think he was being taken seriously by Obama's inner circle. So how did those things, in a sense, evolve at the same time that Obama distanced himself from his own vice presidential pick by not anointing him, yet having to keep calibrating who's the strongest person to beat Trump?
Well, and it wasn't just Obama's circle that was skeptical of Biden. Obama himself was. He would say things like, Americans want their presidents to have a certain swagger. And does Joe Biden have swagger? He would make comments about how the presidency isn't a job for a young man. Everybody knew who he was referring to when he would talk about that. He would also, of course, say that he loved Biden, it was his brother, very close to him, but he wasn't sure that Biden could win. He wasn't sure that Biden could draw the big crowds that Obama thought would be needed in order to really make the argument against Trump and win a campaign against him. This is all, of course, pre-COVID. And so that's all going on. But meanwhile, Obama also has this sense that he needs to stay neutral. He needs to do things that are going to build a better relationship with Bernie Sanders than the one that he had in 2015 and 2016, when he was pretty dismissive of Sanders. And he makes a very explicit effort to bring Sanders into the fold. And he does that with a lot of the other candidates too. And basically, almost every candidate who ran for president before getting into the race had been to see him. And if they didn't get to see him before they declared their candidacy, they went afterwards. And he would be on the phone with all of the major candidates all the way through, talking to them, giving them advice, steering them a little bit as he thought he was doing to make decisions when he thought it would be the better decision.
Isaac, did you ever get the sense, or did anyone have the sense that he did have a favorite? Was he leaning in any direction, even though publicly and in many other ways he was staying neutral?
He was intrigued by candidates who seemed to fit a kind of similar mold as he thought he did. Beto O'Rourke, Mitch Landrieu, Deval Patrick, the sort of outsider people who could light up the rhetoric and maybe get people connected in a way that politicians didn't. It's sort of the non-politician, non-Washington candidate. Deval Patrick is the former governor of Massachusetts, is the rare politician whom Obama thinks has really impressive political skills that are on par with his.
And they go way back because Deval Patrick ran for governor before Obama ran, and Dave Axelrod was his consultant. And I think the Yes We Can slogan started under Patrick, but you mentioned Sanders, and he is from the primary up until this day he's a blessing and in some ways a confusing political figure for Biden, even now as he's trying to wrestle with progressive demands. That hasn't changed. What changed, I guess, is that Biden is the president. But you and the fly in the wall, you came up with two terrific Sanders stories because he's not thought of somebody with demands. So one, could you tell our audience about the list you got for what he likes in green rooms and hotels? And then could you recreate that incredible scene where he comes to the White House for a meeting with Obama and he brings his own cup of coffee and scone in a bag?
Yeah, well, the second one chronologically happens first, and I think tells you a little bit about Sanders' evolution there. He was a guy who was always the outsider in Washington. When he was in the House for all those years, he was off doing his own thing. His book was titled "Outsider in the House." He was known for when he would fly back to Vermont or anywhere else, he would take the middle seat on the plane. That was famous for it. Then he starts running for president and it starts going well, and he gets a campaign plane, a charter plane, and he likes, oh, the plane leaves when I want to leave, when I get there. He starts getting used to that lifestyle a little bit. But he's still that same Bernie Sanders at his core. And so, yes, there's the conversation that he goes to the White House to talk about dropping out of the presidential election in the spring of 2016. He shows up with his own coffee and scone. He was late. It seems like what happened was he decided, oh, I need to stop for a coffee. And he didn't even really think, oh, you're going to the White House. You don't bring snacks. You don't need to, or drop it, leave it in the car. This is a human being, right? And so that what happens when human beings are treated really well and live with a little bit of pomp and circumstances, they get used to it. And Sanders started to get particular about what he wanted in his rooms. He not only would make demands that the room had to be far away from the ice machine or the elevator because he didn't like the noise, but it had to be certain temperature with certain blankets. There were snacks that needed to be in his green room that were laid out, naked juice, blueberry he really liked, and these are laid out there. The thermostat had to be set at 60 degrees exactly. When it wasn't, he would get frustrated. There's a scene in the book where he's sitting on the bed in a hotel room in California, and they've called the woman from the front desk up to try to get the thermostat lower, and she can't get it lower, and she's apologizing to him. She knows exactly who he is, and she says, I'm sorry, Senator Sanders, I can't do anything about it. And he looks at her and he says, so what, Chloe, you don't want me to sleep tonight? And again, much like the Obama story, it's telling you who these people are beyond what you're getting in front of the cameras or in the speeches every day.
So, groundbreaking for the Obama Center is going to happen in the fall. We have a few things going on that I wonder if we could pivot from your book to look a little bit in the future. So let me just throw out 3 questions you could answer as any way you want.
Okay.
So how does what Obama and Biden went through with Sanders, how does that help inform the very real issue Biden has right now as he's trying to make deals with legislation, the progressive, and he needs every Democratic vote in the Senate. The progressives don't like the deals he's making. In fact, why don't we just take that one, and then I want to talk a little bit more about Obama, president.
Look, it's a very tricky one. And in the interview that I did with Biden when he was in the Oval Office, it was the beginning of February, so I was over the phone. It was still COVID restrictions. And he said to me, look, I'm the most progressive person who's ever been president. And that's a brushback, I think it should be noted. It seemed not just to Sanders, but also to Obama, and saying, look at me and the progressive things that I'm proposing here. He pointed out the picture of FDR that he has hanging over the fireplace in the Oval Office in that prime spot. So Biden has a very ambitious approach to his presidency at this point, which I think is very different from what he would have said if you'd asked him, and I did and others did, and when he got into the race in 2019. His sense of what he could do, what he should do, what the pandemic and the continuing response to it demands that he does, are really, it's a really bold, progressive vision in ways that people would not have anticipated from him at all. But look, this is where it gets tricky. Now they did COVID relief, and all the Democrats were on board with that, and now on infrastructure, are they going to make compromises to bring Republicans on board? Well, are those compromises going to sacrifice things like some of the climate change proposals that are in there? That's how a coalition starts to fracture, and they need to figure out how they make that work.
So do you think Sanders still, what lesson from the campaign was there? Sanders did kind of, yeah, he waited. He wasn't as gracious as he could have been. You know, you make that clear. And all the wooing, he could speak out and be more helpful than he is. Does it seem like nothing that happened in the campaign informed him on the road ahead?
No, I think it does with Sanders. I think that he has he's playing this in much more of a insider way with Biden than his years of being an outsider might suggest. Like, he has a very open channel to the White House, and the White House knows that bringing him in as an ally is important. He also has a good personal relationship with Joe Biden, and they connect, and that means something. So when you're seeing things that are happening out of the White House, I think you should most of the time assume that Bernie Sanders is aware of them beforehand and has been consulted. And one of the things that Sanders wants all the time is to be taken seriously. There's a chapter in the book called Take Him Seriously. And he knows he's not going to get everything he wants, but he wants to be able to be a really important part of those negotiations. And he feels like he is for the most part now. Of course, this is where it gets tricky. Let's see what this actually looks like. And then we'll see whether he sticks with it.
You know, I wanted to back up a little bit in terms of the campaign. The pandemic has come up a couple of times, and obviously we're in a different place today than we were during the campaign. What role do you think that the pandemic played in the direction, the trajectory of the campaign? I remember early on there was, you know, everyone was throwing up their hands and tearing out their hair saying, how are we going to have a campaign? How are we going to have a traditional campaign in a pandemic? How did that play out? And were there any key moments that in the pandemic that worked for Biden or perhaps against him?
I mean, it was a big factor in both the policy issues that we were talking about, but also the campaign logistics. I was covering him. I was at the last proper rally that he did, March 9th. It was in Detroit. And the next day I had driven to Cleveland and was expecting to go to a rally then. It was canceled at the last minute, as was the Sanders rally that was supposed to be a few blocks away that same night in Cleveland. I did not myself, as a reporter covering Biden day to day, I didn't see him in person again until the beginning of June. So that's 3 months there, right? And that was the period when he was in his basement or not doing much. He didn't do a public event until Memorial Day, right? And he, sorry?
You write actually on page 442 that the pandemic didn't just expose Trump's weaknesses, it covered Biden's. So the pandemic did a favor. I mean, you have quite explicit as in your analysis. He didn't have to meet people. That meant he didn't flub. He didn't. He could be more scripted. And at his age, he knew that. You write that no one thought that he could match the number of rallies that or draw the crowds that Trump had. So you didn't have to contrast this. So when you look at it, do you think Biden would be president today without the pandemic?
You know, it's not, again, it's not just that, but that's a real factor into it. And I think yes, the point there is real. The rallies would have been a real contrast point. The other thing is there are some focus groups that I describe in the book that were done with those Obama-Trump voters, the people who voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012, voted for Donald Trump in 2016, that were done towards the end of the campaign last year between people who couldn't decide whether they were Biden voters or Trump voters. And they asked them, what do you think? What do you make of these two people? And the response that they gave about Trump was, again, these were people who voted for him in 2016. He said, I don't really like Trump, but he does know what's going on with the economy and could probably fix the economy when we come out of the pandemic, but I don't know that he can fix the pandemic. They looked at Biden, they said, he's a good guy. I like him. He doesn't really know what's going on with the economy. And I'm not really sure what's going on with things like defund the police and that kind of energy coming out of the left flank of the Democratic Party. But it does seem like he could fix the pandemic. And so those voters broke more for Biden than for Trump. And you look at the close margins in the states here, you combine 77,000 votes in 4 states, and that gives Trump an electoral college win. Those kinds of factors, making government real, making politics real, it's an impact in all of our lives, seems to have done a lot to help Biden and make that case that somebody who has been around for 50 years and knows government, all those things that Trump ran so successfully against when it was Hillary Clinton, ended up being pluses for Joe Biden.
Do you think that Obama now feels free to totally move on, or because Trump is still campaigning, he's going to have a rally, he's going to the border June 30th, he's going to have a rally in Ohio, he's actively involved. Do you have a sense that Obama can move on and do, transcend politics, just work on the foundation, try and now that the Supreme Court today for the 3rd time upheld Obamacare, that legacy is there. Every so often Trump would just do something to undo another part of the legacy, or do you think that Obama feels he still has to be vigilant and still, in a sense, have a behind the scenes role to play?
It's much less than it was. And he's freed up. I think he's done more interviews in the last 2 weeks than he did over 4 years. So he's just speaking more publicly about things. He can be the kind of person that he wanted to be. He can say, look, what happens with the DNC is now on Joe Biden and Jamie Harrison. What happens with the presidency, he doesn't need to feel like every day might be some crisis that he'll have to respond to. There's reporting in the book, for example, after Trump fires Jeff Sessions, whether they're going to need to issue some kind of statement. Should he call up George W. Bush and say, issue a joint statement saying, don't fire Bob Mueller? That kind of thing is obviously not part of Obama's day-to-day in the way that it was for the 4 years of Trump. There's a quote towards the end of the book where one of Obama's friends, a big donor of his named Robert Wolf, said to me, he feels like he's passed the torch and he can move forward. And also you see certain things like the fundraising for the foundation has actually picked up since Trump lost.
It needs to, because they got a lot more money they got to raise to get there.
Yeah.
Right. And actually the hit to fundraising for the foundation was compounded by COVID, and it picked up, but hasn't. I don't think it. We'll know more in July when
Sure.
990 comes out, which is the IRS form. The foundation stopped doing quarterly announcements because the data wasn't all that useful anymore in terms of knowing numbers on it. Do you think one of the quick things that you also have in the book, because you say it definitively, I think I wrote around it, and this has to do with the vice presidential search and Tammy Duckworth. I wrote all how she was in the vice presidential vetting process, and she was a prospect. But if I knew now what I knew then, it would be a little different, because you write that her birth in Thailand, she has an American father and a mother who was the daughter of Chinese immigrants. The Biden people just thought, it can't happen. We can't risk a resurgence of birtherism. Was that just from the very start? Then why did they even start up with Senator Duckworth?
I mean, they looked at her, and I think it should be said that it's not like she would have been the pick if not for that. But that ended up being, they just couldn't get their heads past that. That would have been a factor that came up all the time. Even look at what happened with Kamala Harris, right? And she was born in America, in the continental United States, is not even in Hawaii like Obama. And there was in the first couple of hours and days after she was picked, there were mispronouncing her name, and then there was even something like, well, her father was from Jamaica and her mother was from India. Does that really make her a natural born citizen? So it was just something that they knew realistically the politics of this would end up including. And they were drawn to Duckworth for a couple of reasons, not just because of her background, and she's a woman, but obviously her service in the military, and the way that she has distinguished herself for being willing and able to just take a rhetorical club to people, cadet bone spurs, as she used to call Trump. Those sorts of things make a difference also in thinking about what you want in a vice presidential candidate.
Right. But what about the cabinet position? There was also some expectations in some reports that she might be in line for Veterans Affairs or something else. What happened there?
Well, I mean, the cabinet selection process, though, is very tricky. But you have to think: is being the Secretary of Veterans Affairs a better job for her and what she might want than being a senator? And was it the right fit for what they wanted it to be from the Biden side of it? It didn't come together in that way. But look, who knows how long we're going to be looking at a Biden presidency? It could be another 3+ years. It could be another 4 years on top of that. So we'll see. But I think Senator Duckworth distinguished herself in a lot of people's minds over the course of 2020, made herself more of a national player than she was seen even to that point.
And she's gonna remain a national player. You suggesting in your opinion that she might be looking at a presidential run sooner rather than later?
I mean, look, if there is one thing that I learned from 2016, it's not to make predictions about what's going to happen in politics. You see all the buttons that are up there on my wall. Those are 26 campaign buttons from the 26 people who ran primary campaigns in 2020. So who knows what will happen. But I think people far outside of Illinois took Tammy Duckworth more seriously at the end of 2020 than they did at the beginning of it.
So as we wrap up this segment, one of the things that Biden was looking for was to create the chemistry he had with Obama. And then you write about how Obama reminded him, hey, when we started, we didn't have any chemistry. We had to, they didn't start out as buddies. So I got a sense that Biden was drawn to Michigan Governor Whitmer because he thought they could get that buddy chemistry going. Do you see now, does this seem like the chemistry is there? Do you think it's still a work in progress? What's your assessment?
Well, it's still a work in progress, but Lynn, when you and I saw each other in Chicago and we were both covering Vice President Harris there, that was the beginning of April, and I was working on a story which has since come out about what her beginning as vice president has been. And one of the points that was made to me in there is that they barely knew each other before. Harris had a professional, sort of transcended professional friendship with Beau Biden, Joe Biden's late son, is most meaningful to him. And that was something. They knew each other from sort of being around Washington. But remember, Harris gets to the Senate, Biden is already out as vice president. So they never really worked together. But because of COVID, actually, they spent so much time during the transition in the early months. They weren't traveling. They weren't really doing a lot of big things, but they were in the rooms together many hours a day. And they got to know each other and have continued to get to know each other. Biden has been very serious about making sure that she is drawn in on conversations, that she's part of the mix of what's going on at the White House. And she has thrown herself seriously into doing the job to not make it seem like, oh, she's just looking for when she's going to start to run for president or whatever else. And so you see a relationship developing. It's still not the, brotherly relationship that Joe Biden and Barack Obama had. And I don't think, Jill Biden and Michelle Obama eventually became very friendly. Biden's grandchildren with Obama's kids. You don't see Doug Emhoff and Jill Biden like going out to lunch together or hanging out, but that may yet develop over time. As Obama was saying to Biden in these conversations that were in the book, give it time. The first year of the Obama presidency, when Biden was vice president, they were barely talking to each other for stretches of it.
Well, there we go. So we'll see. By the way, you also had another nugget with Vice President Harris when she moved into the Naval Observatory. She didn't realize that it was staffed by people from the Navy. Okay, I thought it was kind of well known as to how it worked, but it all, I guess, or that her husband would have to quit his job at the law firm. Anyway,
I think
everybody,
it just speaks to how new she is to Washington. Lynn, you've spent more time around
Absolutely.
the vice presidency than she has. And so there's just all the stuff that she was trying to make sense of. Like, okay, this is your life now.
yeah. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Our Isaac Dover, the author of the just published book, Battle for the Soul, Inside the Democratic Campaign to Defeat Trump. Here is the book. So, and you see it there. So thanks so much for joining us.
Great book, Isaac. Thanks for being here, and good luck with the book.
Open up. I'll see you at the White House or Congress or somewhere. Anyway.
So, and now we can go back to sort of normal living. It was weird writing a campaign book without a campaign to cover in the traditional sense, but I did my best. I hope everybody enjoys it as much as you guys did.
Well, thank you. And Laura, and thanks for coming on to the show. And for our next segment, Laura, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. And yes, we have a repeat guest back again very quickly from last time. We really appreciate the history-making new speaker, not so new anymore, Speaker of the Illinois House of Representatives, Chris Welch. Since your last visit, Speaker Welch, you've been extremely busy and have been front and center in a very busy legislative season. So have you had a chance to take a breath yet?
Not yet. In fact, I'm on the way home now, so I'm looking forward to a restful Father's Day weekend. But I'll tell you, I'm pleased with the work that the legislature did under my first term as Speaker, first session. So I'm going to rest well this weekend.
What would you say is your biggest victory, the thing you're most proud of coming out of this session? One thing.
Laura, one thing. Oh my God.
Just one. We'll get to some other things.
The budget, because the governor signed it today. We're getting a responsible, balanced budget done on time, and a budget that people across the state are going to be proud of. It's going to actually help us lead to a credit rating increase for the first time in probably over 2 decades. We pay down our pension obligations. We pay down debt. I mean, when was the last time you guys
Speaker, could you maybe give your sound is not coming in as clearly. Could you maybe get a little closer to the mic? Let's try that.
Can you hear me now?
That's better.
Much better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was bragging about our budget and all the debt that it pays down and meeting our pension obligation, being responsible, and also helping people, coming out of this awful pandemic. I really believe that this budget is something that we're going to really be looking back on as a turning point in Illinois' fiscal health.
Great. A lot of work was done down in Springfield this session. So I wanted to talk about one of the hot topics that's been breaking the last couple of days, and that is the passage after many years of trying by many advocates of the elected school board legislation, which will provide. There'll be a gradual shift from fully appointed to hybrid to fully elected in the next several years. But that's been cited as a big victory by education advocates, by the CTU. Obviously, it was something that you were supportive of. But there's been kind of a little bit of a pause because State Representative Delia Ramirez, the sponsor, after it was passed, put a hole in the bill, which means it won't go to the governor's desk for signature right away. What's going on with that? What's that about?
Well, first of all, Laura, let me say that indeed it's definitely a big victory for those who believe in democracy and more participation in our democracy. The fully elected school board has been something that I've voted on 4 or 5 times since I've been in Springfield, and we finally got it done this year. What Leader Ramirez did was something that she and I talked about. The mayor and I had several conversations. You may have heard the mayor over the last few days say she wanted more time to come to a deal, wanted to have negotiations. So Leader Ramirez, as a gesture to the mayor, put a motion on her bill that to reconsider. That basically she has the ability to remove it any time. But she's agreed to hold it for a couple of weeks to give the mayor time to come to the table and work with her on this issue. Leader Ramirez said on the floor that she agrees that the bill wasn't perfect and would need a trailer bill. So if you agree that it needs a trailer bill and we agree that it's not perfect, let's sit the mayor down at the table and have the mayor of the the biggest city in this state, the economic engine of this state, take part in the negotiations and see what we can do.
Wait a minute.
Right.
This-
Could you try to move a little bit closer? I'm sorry to this because you're still a little bit crackly. So yes, so it was gesture to the mayor, but this bill as it stands is not going to change significantly, right? We're talking about a trailer bill for down the road, and the mayor would say, and as she has said publicly many times, that she has major issues with the bill, particularly around the campaign finance piece, the fact that she's concerned about campaign finance spending that would become exorbitant and cut out the little guy, that she's got concerns about immigrants, undocumented immigrants, their ability to participate. And of course, wasn't crazy about the idea of fully elected to begin with. So how are you going to solve? Those are pretty major objections she has. And I know she met with the Black Caucus, legislative Black Caucus earlier in the week. Were you at that meeting?
I was not at that meeting.
Okay.
I did hear reports from members who were. The mayor is going to sit at a table with Leader Ramirez and the stakeholders, and hopefully they can work through these issues. You know, there's a couple of procedural things that can happen. Ramirez can remove the brick on the bill and let it go to the governor's desk and file a trailer bill. She can literally do a motion to reconsider, put it back up on the board. Well, actually, technically, no, you can't do that because that was on a motion to concur. So the most likely thing to do would be is to work with the mayor on what the language of a trailer bill would be.
Okay, so for people who don't know what a trailer bill is, this is real important. It's because Laura asked the question of whether or not the legislation is going to change. So you're working with the Senate bill as amended, HB 2908. So the trailer bill is just a way to revise it after it's passed, but you already then have passed it. So Speaker Welch, yes, or I mean, where is there going to be negotiation then before you finish?
Before it goes to the governor.
Governor, what is it you want? You're the speaker, you get to call the bill. Please be so specific as to what you want to happen.
I want the parties to get to the table and talk. And it's my understanding that Mayor and Leader Ramirez in conversations today at 4 o'clock. I have been in meetings since then. I have not heard how their conversations went today at 4, but what I want is them to get in the room. The mayor wanted more time.
You're hard to hear. So you could you say that again? You sound like you're in a submarine right now.
The mayor and Leader Ramirez had a meeting at 4 o'clock today. I wanted them to get to the table. That's what I wanted. And the mayor wanted more time. I asked Leader Ramirez to give him more time. That's why the motion was filed.
So is there a meeting set? And when?
Well, it sounds like they met this at 4 o'clock today. What came out of that meeting? Did anything come out of that meeting?
Laura, I haven't heard the results of that meeting yet.
So how fluid, I mean, how open is the bill? How open are you to, as the years went by, you went now to, you have this interim hybrid, 2111 appointed by the mayor, 10 elected. However, that sounds kind of crazy to me how it might work functionally in elections. But are you open to a significant rewrite? Is there something, what's on or off the table of what is untouchable in the bill or not? You make it sound for a moment as everything is on the table because you want to hear from her. Could you be a little more?
Lynn, can you repeat your question? I didn't hear you.
Basically, if you're meeting, the bill isn't then in its final form, what's on the table and how much revision as the speaker are you open to?
This bill, that House Bill 2908, has passed the legislature. That bill will likely at some point move to the governor's desk for signature, and the governor has indicated that he will sign it. What they are negotiating now is the content of the trailer bill.
Okay.
The mayor has concerns that Leader Ramirez has agreed to hear out. Also, members of our caucus, members in the General Assembly had some issues that Leader Ramirez committed to addressing in a trailer bill. I can't tell you exactly what's going to be in there, but she has made statements on the record that she agrees that there needs to be some issues addressed in a trailer bill. And so there's definitely room for this bill that was passed to be improved. What those improvements will look like, those are the subjects of the negotiations.
And does that happen? I'm a little rusty on Springfield. Does Governor Pritzker sign it, then you do the trailer, or do you do the trailer and then send it to the governor?
Well, he would likely sign this bill, and we could do a trailer bill in veto session.
Well,
the effective date of this bill, the elections don't start, I believe, was 2024 or 2026. So it doesn't go into effect right away. So there's plenty of time to.
Well, you would have the first elected school board, this hybrid 2025, which means if we move the primary back to March, you would know in 2024 people are going to start running. And by the way, let me nail this down. Is it your intention so in 2022, the primary will be in June because of redistricting? Will it be back? Is it your intention as Speaker to bring it back to March in 2024?
The elections bill that the governor signed today said that this was a one-time only.
Okay.
It's going to go back to March after next year. This is a result of the delayed census data and a response to the pandemic, and so it's a one-time thing, similar to what they did years ago when they moved to primary because of then Senator Obama.
Right. So, by the way, since we're talking about, let me jump in here. We might go back to schools because I have a sense we haven't finished, but since we're on vaguely remap and primary issues, the legislature did all it could do to get the remap for the Cook County Board of Review, the Supreme Court, and the State House and Senate done. So what's your thinking about what you want to do with the congressional map? And we're waiting now for real census data on that particular map. But what's your thought on what you think Democrats should do going forward?
Well, I believe that if the census data comes out at the end of August or the latest end of September, we will be prepared when we return for veto session in mid-October, late October, to pass a congressional map based on those census data. And then under the new elections bill that went into law, was signed into law today, circulations will begin in January of 2022.
So who are the Democrats in Illinois of the incumbents that you think need the most help in the remap?
Oh, we don't draw maps based on that.
No, I'm not saying, no, hold on. No, please bear with me. I didn't ask about how you draw a map. I'm just asking who would need a better district. I'm not saying you would draw a map to give someone a better district. I'm just saying in your analysis, who needs the most help from a remap?
Well, I think at the end of the day, we need to make sure that they're all equal in representation and that it reflects the diversity of our state.
No. You know what I'm talking about. There are only 18 members. 5 Republicans are going to lose a district. Please don't. This is like we had on the last show. Come on.
I don't think any Democrats need help.
Are you kidding me? You don't think Congresswoman Lauren Underwood doesn't need some more Democrats in her district? Really?
I think Lauren's going to be fine. She
really?
did quite well. Yeah.
But it's clear that this is your map to draw. This is the party has the power here. So you're going to want to draw the most favorable map for your members to make sure that you ensure that they stay in office. Correct?
We're going to draw a map that's fair. We're going to draw a map that's equal. We're going to draw a map to ensure. I like the fact that Lauren Underwood was elected to Congress and she's doing a heck of a job. And truly, she was the choice of that district, and we'd like to make sure we keep her.
Well, there are a couple of lawsuits. There's actually, I think, a couple of lawsuits that have already been filed by the Republicans and others that are challenging the fairness of this map. How are you going to handle that?
Well, our lawyers are in court. They're responding to it. The Republicans are challenging it based on the use of ACS data, which is interesting because Republicans in other states have done the same thing that we've done
Well, I'm sorry, what kind of data are they challenging on?
The American Community Survey data. They're challenging the use of the American Community Survey data, which is interesting because Republicans in other states have used the American Census Community Survey data to draw maps, like in Oklahoma. They did the same thing we did. And so we have a constitutional deadline that they seem to continue to forget. They don't even mention the fact that we followed our constitutional mandate. So, cases in court, they sued last time, we beat them, and I believe it's going to be a similar situation this time as well.
Do you have, who is the point person on your team for congressional maps?
Who's the point person on our team?
Yeah, who's responsible for working drawing it, doing analysis? Who is that person?
Well, we have an entire team that works on the map. I have a chief of staff. I have a general counsel. I have a senior advisor.
Who is responsible for figuring out the congressional map?
We will do it as a team, Lynn. It works as a team.
Okay.
We will also, talk to the Congress people at some point. We haven't done that yet because we haven't done anything around the congressional map.
So I want to close the loop going back to schools on it. In the trailer bill, how much is subject to negotiation? Is it just a few details on the margins, or could you do a trailer bill that could substantially change the legislation that Governor Pritzker is expected to sign?
Well, the parties are at the table. All the stakeholders are at the table. I got to imagine when you're at the table, anything can happen. And if they walk out of there in agreement to change the bill that just got passed, then that's what'll happen. But I got to imagine everyone's going into it with an open mind, and that they're going to listen to the mayor's going to listen to them, and hopefully they can have a meeting of the minds and come out with an agreement for a trailer bill.
So why?
But is it possible or at all that the fundamental bill itself will change? That the mayor doesn't want a fully elected school board, and she's been fighting that battle for a long time. Is it possible that you could retreat, or the leadership could retreat from that, or can you tell voters, can you tell parents, can you tell the city that there will be an elected school board in the next several years, no matter what happens with this bill?
We supported a fully elected school board. That's what's in the bill that passed. I don't see that changing. There's some other issues that the mayor has addressed.
Such as, I mentioned the immigrant issue and the money issue in terms of campaign finance. Are those the key issues that folks around the table are talking about right now?
Mayor has mentioned several issues, Laura. She's talked about financial situations, who's responsible for what, pensions, who's responsible for what, things of that nature. And so districts, campaign financing, those are the types of things that can be spelled out a little bit more specifically.
Okay.
So those are all still on the table now.
Right. So those are details, not a fundamental change. Now, I don't think I understand the following in the legislation when it comes to to people who are here illegally. They can be part of school councils, but they can or cannot, in the legislation that's going to Governor Pritzker, they can or cannot vote in the elected school board.
Again, I'm not in the room. I'm not negotiating.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about the legislation as written. Do you know? Okay. You voted on it. Okay. So how?
I know I voted on it. I support a fully elected school board. That's what I
know, but this issue. Don't you think this issue? Excuse me. If Democrats allow undocumented immigrants to vote for, which is what Mayor Lightfoot wants, to vote in school board elections, how would it work? You go to, it's 2022 and you get to vote, it's 2025 and you get to vote in a school board election, but could you also vote in other, what happens when you get to the voting place? Because how do you make it clear that an illegal immigrant, the undocumented immigrant, can vote in this contest, but can't vote in that and another one? How would it work without it being a very confusing situation, and how would it work to give anyone who is not a citizen who is voting the assurance that that this won't backfire on them?
And you're asking me to answer a hypothetical question that I don't even think is, going to be an issue. I mean, the lawyers are going to guide the parties in this. If it's not constitutional, it's not going to be in the bill.
Okay, so in terms of drawing the districts for the hybrid, when 10 people are elected, in that first year, what is the system? How would that work for that first election?
I think that's part of the details that they're working out.
Uh-huh. I see. By the way, on the one other thing that I wondered about, and this is kind of like moving on to another subject. You've now been speaker for a bit of time. What is it you've learned about power and being a leader that you might not have known or realized before you got the job?
Well, I think number one, what I realized about power and being a leader is it means that you have to be collaborative and work in partnership with people. You have to care about people. You have to care about them as humans. And this is not an easy job, and you can't do it alone. And so if you got to do it right, you have to do it by working with people and caring about them and seeing that everyone is successful.
What's your biggest surprise, Speaker Welch? It's something that, I mean, you've been in the legislature for a long time. You were already in leadership roles before. What did you not expect and that you've encountered in this new job?
The time commitment. I think to do this job the right way, it takes a lot of time, Laura. It's 7 days a week while we were in session. 7 days a week. I'm in Springfield Monday through Friday, and when I'm at home, I'm in my district office Saturday and Sunday getting ready for the next week. It's a lot of time away from your family, and in order to do it right, you have to really invest the time to get it done right.
So what kind of hours are you putting in daily and weekly?
Long hours. I would get in the office about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. Typically leave 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock.
How does your family feel about that? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
They're happy that I'm at home.
So
We're done for a while.
do you ever talk to Mike Madigan? Have you talked to him?
I haven't talked. I did talk to him very early on a couple of times. He was the speaker. He did it for 36 out of 38 years. There were a couple times that I had questions that I asked him very early on, and he was very cordial. But I haven't talked to him in quite some time.
What's the best piece of advice? Has he given you advice that's been helpful, valuable?
I think the best advice that he gave me was the same advice that my mom gave me. That's
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. You froze.
Uh-oh, Laura.
I heard from my mom at some point. It was just be yourself.
Just be yourself.
So I am wondering, going back to policy for a moment, do you think under your speakership that you would advance at some point another try to have an increase to change our state income tax system to a graduated system? We know the referendum on the fair tax didn't go. Do you think that is an issue that still should be addressed one way or the other?
Well, we didn't do it this year, likely not next year. We had a great budget that we did do some structural things in this year's budget. Do I think that Illinois' tax system is broken? I think so. I think that the wealthy doesn't pay their fair share. I think at some point that it has to be revisited, but it probably won't happen anytime in the next couple of years here.
On it. And how's your assessment of the political shape that Governor Pritzker is in as he goes into a re-election cycle in 2022. We don't know who he would face. It looks like he has no primary right now. But given everything, how would you assess, what does he need to do to put himself in shape for the re-election campaign?
I think the governor did a great job in 2019, his first year out. Then he got socked by the pandemic unexpectedly and, had to govern, in a state of emergency basically for 15 months. And I think he did a pretty good job, but now he's got to, continue to help Illinois recover and build back better. I think the budget that he signed today is going to help him do that again next year. As he enters into the campaign season, he's going to have to continue to address the real issues that's affecting people every day. And I think that's what we're doing right now. I think if he decides to run for re-election, I think he's well positioned.
Do you have any doubt that he's not going to run for re-election?
Say that again, Lynn? Say that again?
That if he decides, and I guess do you think there's a potential that he will not run for re-election? I'm curious because you said it that way.
Well, he hasn't announced that he's running yet, so I'm not going to put words in his mouth. I know he's
right.
Talking to his family and considering things with his family. I certainly hope that for stability's sake, for stability of our state, that he runs again and we get to continue to work together.
So now that so many of the COVID restrictions have ended, are you back into doing in-person fundraising, and what kind of events do you have in the days ahead?
I just left an in-person fundraising event in Decatur. I have a whole host of plans for the summer. We are working to make sure that we can re-elect Democrats, in the General Assembly and in other parts of government across this state. I'm a Democrat. I'm going to help Democrats get elected up and down the ballot. And, I'm going to travel the state like I did today and really got to see some great people in Decatur.
Where are you right now?
I'm in Decatur, Illinois.
Uh-huh. And so you're on a statewide tour as we speak?
I am. I have been visiting the state all session, and I am in Decatur today.
Did you have a fundraiser in Decatur today?
I supported one of my colleagues who had a fundraiser in Decatur.
A fundraiser. Do you have any big names coming in to headline fundraisers for you? And who are they?
We're working on that.
What?
We're working on that.
So who's the dream headliner that you'd like?
A dream headliner?
Yeah.
Kamala Harris. Joe Biden.
Well, that's.
Are you working on those? Do you actually have requests out?
I'm going to ask. You can always ask. I don't think they'll
right.
say yes.
Do you? The Biden White House has been doing a lot of outreach to local officials. Do you have what's your relationship with the Biden White House? Is there a liaison that you deal with that checks in with Democratic House speakers?
Well, the White House has had outreach. I've had conversations with Speaker Pelosi and Senator Durbin and several folks.
I'm talking about the White House, the Biden White House.
I have had conversations with people in the White House, yes.
Who are they? What, Domestic Policy Council? Who have you been talking to?
I have spoken a couple of different times with policy advisors at the White House, and I'm looking forward to visiting DC this summer and making some visits to officials in DC.
So you're kind of come out, what now then you're in my territory and you understand that we do this in person and I will cover you.
Do you actually have a trip planned or scheduled?
Say that again, Laura.
Do you have a trip scheduled? Do you have something lined up already for DC?
Yeah, well, I don't know the dates offhand, but I know it's sometime in July, and I'll be spending some time in DC. And yes, Lynn, I'd love to be on your show where we have a better connection.
Well, we'll do it. So Laura, if we do it again, we'll go somewhere. We'll have two computers set up and we'll just, we'll have them next to you. But
well, that means you got to come back again, Speaker.
We can talk about in July, maybe we'll have numbers for the congressional map. But, Madigan, I don't think he came specifically on it. I know we're in our closing minute here. So Laura, it's at 8:30. The speaker's been generous with our time.
Yes, and we really appreciate it.
We wrap it up.
We'll work on that connection because we don't want to miss a word. You're helping us break some news tonight, and we're glad to have you back.
Well, thank you, and I look forward to coming back to your virtual table.
Okay, I'll see you in a few weeks then. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good trip home.
Laura, I should know this. When is our July show? What is the date? Is it July?
I will tell you. I think it's about a month from now, and it is July 15th.
Okay, so everybody, I'm going to dance us out. Come to our next show, July 15th. It will be exciting, whatever it is. We also have in our pipeline, as it gets closer to groundbreaking for the Obama Presidential Center, we're going to do some special edition or some show dedicated to that. But in the meantime, we learned a lot from Isaac talking about the Democrats, and it was great having this speaker on. Laura, I was a little surprised to see that maybe there's a little more that Mayor Lightfoot, who did not do well with this school bill, at least might have a second bite at the apple to at least get a little more than what she did.
She's trying to play catch up, and sort of the wisdom out there is that maybe she started a little bit too late or wasn't as effective as she could have been early on, and so now she's trying to play catch up. So we'll see.
We'll see. And in the meantime, let me sell some subscriptions here. Everybody, thanks for joining us on the show. We want to see you in July, but in the meantime, please buy some subscriptions, okay? We've amped up our digital offerings to bring all of it to you from wherever you are. You know, we have the Sun-Times e-paper. You know, I love it. I get up every morning and look at that first. Even actually when I'm in Chicago and have the real paper, I tend to look at it. We still have a special. You could get unlimited access to both the e-paper and every story on this at suntimes.com for only $2.49 a month. You go to suntimes.com/subscribe. As you know, we need you and your support for our newsletters, for our podcasts, for our print product, and for our website. Couldn't do it without you, but we need you to subscribe. So for now, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again in July.
Have a great evening.